right, it's your brother Zion Lex. Sign up for our online academy, which is Learn Torah Hebrew Academy at patreon.com/Learn Torah. There are several classes that we offer. We offer a Biblical Hebrew 101 class for beginners. We have a Biblical Hebrew 102 class for people who are a little bit more advanced. We also have a weekly Torah class. We also have our Patriarchs of the Covenant course, our Matriarchs of the Covenant course, and a bi-weekly rabbinical course. All of these courses can be found on Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/Learn Torah. You guys were definitely in for it. It's a very invasive class. All of our classes are deeply invasive and very, very meticulous to the T when it comes to understanding the culture, the heritage, and the history of our ancient ancestors. So sign up for Biblical Hebrew at patreon.com/Learn Torah. I am your brother, Zion Lex.
By the way, to whoever wrote those Hebrew writings, was smarter than anybody we have ever met in our life.
Why you say that?
Because when I'm studying the writing, and they have what's called they have idioms. They have idioms, family. They have metaphors. They have epithets. Epithets is like, say, El is the God. So you'd have El Elyon. El Elyon would be probably, no, that's not a good example. But just different names of that same God would be an epithet of that God. They have epithets. They have idioms. Who does that if you're not intelligent? I know that, but I'm just saying they had some sort of numerology in there. When you see Zion going into the whole gematria stuff, that's later on, but they did have some sort of gematria in numeric, alphanumeric thing going. I'm saying this to everybody who is in Kemet. We know how great Kemet is, but whoever wrote the text, whoever wrote that Bible is smart as a mother effer.
All right, all right. How you guys doing out there? Can everybody hear me? Am I loud and am I clear? I will proceed. I will continue once you guys let me know that I am live, I'm loud, and I'm clear. How's everybody doing out there in YouTube world? Thumb up the video, family, and share the live stream, as this is definitely going to be one of those live streams. Thumb up the video and share the live stream, as this is definitely going to be one of those live streams. By the way, if my sound is clear, you guys give me a 1 in the chat room. Let me know how clear my sound is. That way I know whether I need to make any adjustments or not. All right. You guys have seen a lot going on. Myself and Jabari had a interesting conversation, an interesting dialogue. It's almost impossible to have dialogues on things that you differ on without it turning into a debate. So I'm just not a fan of calling things dialogues all the time, because often when we enter an intellectual space where we are forced or maybe even compelled to disagree on things, obviously that's when the debate starts. So I'm going to call it a debate, even though it is unofficially a debate, right? It was not officially a debate, but I still want to unofficially give it that name, because that's certainly what it turned into. For those of you who saw it, make sure you put your comments in the comment section, right? If you caught that debate, make sure you start putting your comments in the comment section. I want to start hearing from people. What did you think about it? I'm going to play a couple of moments from that debate, by the way, just to kind of bring us up to speed with what we talked about. And then I want to challenge a claim that Brother Jabari made during our sit down, where he said that Nabta Playa was a civilization, right, that gives rise to ancient Egypt. Right? I'm not going to correct him, because apparently he doesn't know. And unlike many other people, I don't need to be rude in correcting people, right? Someone's wrong, they're wrong. That's it. It's nothing that serious. It's nothing we got to go crazy about. When you're wrong, you're wrong. That's it. All right, let me find this video real quick. And as soon as I find this video on my channel, I'm going to play it. In the meantime, let me do this real quick for y'all. Thumb up the video, family, share the live stream. We will be right back.
I want to say this. We have to support each other. We have to support Black businesses. I must say, when it comes to biblical Hebrew and you want to study it, my brother Zion Lex has classes. He doesn't only teach biblical Hebrew, he teaches Medu Neter. You want to learn? Absolutely. Go to him. Let him teach you what he has mastered. It's beautiful to watch him display it.
Minutes, a couple of moments from the discussion that myself and Jabari had. I want to make something clear. I also want to correct some things that Jabari said. I think blatantly, but I also think he said things in error. And I'll point out what the difference is. So me and Jabari were supposed to be having a discussion on the Hamas-Israeli conflict. That was a minor topic. The greater topic was, when does Kemet become a civilization? What are we looking at to determine that? And what are the hallmarks of civilization, right? That was our general topic. That was our general discussion. As myself and Jabari sat down to have and hold this discussion, we all soon realized that Jabari didn't have much to say. Jabari is a very crafty individual, I want to say, and Jabari was fishing, right? When two scholars are sitting down and having a discussion and one scholar is virtually unprepared for the topic, rather than engage one's opponent on said topic, what that scholar will in turn do is they will fish for answers, right? So they won't really answer questions. What they're really attempting to do is gauge the temperature of what you know and what you have to present. And then they'll respond based on that. So you can always tell who's not really prepared because they won't fully engage, right? They're always holding back. There's no real need to jump in and share what it is that they have to say. So that's the first thing I want to point out and make sure that everybody understands, is that Jabari admittedly was very much unprepared to have this discussion. And that's fine in a sense, because I understand the spiritual position that he holds. I understand the historical position that he holds. And in just considering those two positions alone, I would say that it makes sense to me that he was unprepared, just based on what I know of him and what I know of him to believe. So it makes sense to me why he's unprepared and possibly never will be prepared. What I want to also say is Jabari feels the need in every dialogue to do as what scholars may call posturing, right? There's a need at all times to remind everybody in the room that he's the historian, right? And that he is the academic from Cornell University, and all others are below and beneath that pay grade and that level. And what's interesting is it's a great thing. We're not going to act like it's not something to be touted. It's a great thing or lauded. It's a great thing to have scholarship, right? Especially if one has scholarship in the area of study that one is talking about. Those are beautiful things. However, the most beautiful thing about a person's scholarship and about a person's degrees is that what you know should validate that you have those titles and those degrees, right? You can't just enter a conversation and say, I'm the historian because I went to Cornell and this is what I do for a living. You have to show it in the knowledge, right? You got to show it in the knowledge. So I have respect for Jabari scholastically, which is why I continually sit down with him. And that's why I'll continually sit down with him, because I respect him as an academic. But that doesn't mean for a single second that I don't notice the cheap shots that he throws. That I don't notice the fits that he has, you know, the ego maniac syndrome, I like to call it. I notice all of those things. And at times, you know, it's challenging because you really just want to have a debate, but you know that your opponent, because of the topic, the nature of the topic, is unprepared to engage you. So once that happens, you know that you're in for red herring, straw man attacks, right? Your straw man attack essentially is when an opponent is making an argument against and attacking a view that you haven't presented throughout the course of the dialogue, nor is the subject of the dialogue. So if you guys notice, and I'll play it in a couple of moments, when me and Jabari sat down to discuss when Kemet becomes a civilization, Jabari says we're not going to act like we don't know why Zion wants to have this conversation. Zion wants to have this conversation because of his interest in Sumer and the eponymous Hebrew ancestor Abraham. Now, he could feel that way, and that's fine. And he could point that out briefly, and that's fine. But to spend the bulk of one's time to continually bring up Abraham and to continually bring up Sumer, it has no place in that conversation. So that lets us know that what a person is doing at that point is they're behaving within what's called in academia, they're attacking the straw man, right? They're attacking an argument that their opponent has not made throughout the course of that dialogue. So I'm going to play it for you guys really quick. I want everybody to be able to see this. I want to just remind everybody real quick to thumb up the video and share the live stream. I don't usually go live this early, so a lot of people are unaware that I'm live. So if you guys can just do the solid and share this live stream so that everybody knows that we are live right now. And here we go.
So Zion, I think you had some other topics you wanted to talk to me about too, right? Right? I think you're muted. What were you?
Absolutely. So the other topic that we wanted to talk about that you and I have, what we're going to affectionately say is unfinished business on, is the topic of the borrowings or the claims of either borrowings or stealing of Kemetic culture from that of the Hebrews, that of the Israelites, which opens up an even larger conversation, because in order to say that someone took, borrowed, or stole, we want to know, what the proofs of authorship is. So that's why in me and Jabari's dialogues, we usually have conversations which are anchored around the conversation of when civilization occurs for Kemet and when civilization occurs in Mesopotamia for the people of Sumerian descent. And so tonight's discussion was entitled, When Does Kemet Become a Civilization? And I actually had a subtitle that I spoke with Jabari over the phone. And the subtitle is, what are the hallmarks of civilization? Right? Because we can't effectively speak of Kemet as a civilization unless we first point out what are the hallmarks of civilization. So Brother Jabari, the floor is yours. The question that I have for you is, when does Kemet become a civilization? What are we looking at to determine that? And what are the hallmarks of civilization? All right, I'm going to pause that right there real quick just to say a couple of things, because that set the pace for what should have been the course of the dialogue that we had. My question, as all my questions are, were deeply specific. When does Kemet become a civilization? What are we looking at to determine that Kemet is a civilization? And what are the hallmarks of civilization? In that dialogue, I said that the question I asked is a three-part question, to which Jabari took issue with that. Right? He says, you're asking me a three-part question, yet you're telling me to hurry up, which, mind you, I understand what he's trying to say in that respect. However, if you just scrutinize the questions that I asked, the two follow-up questions should have been his answer for the first question. The first question is, when does Kemet become a civilization? Right? So that's a question of time. So he has to develop and show us a timeline, a definitive timeline for when Kemet becomes a civilization. The only way that he can do that is by first, in some sense, apart from the obvious, which is giving us a date, he has to also define what a civilization is, because a lot of people don't know, as I'm going to show you, Jabari himself doesn't even know what a civilization exactly is. Some people are calling earlier cultures civilizations. And because of that part, we're going to be in trouble in terms of answering the question. So I asked him, what are the hallmarks of civilization? Because I wanted to make it clear for everybody watching that Jabari really doesn't understand the nature of the topic to even debate or have a fulfilling dialogue on it, right? Which is why you saw that he only engaged with so far, and he admitted from the outset, as I'm going to play in a couple of moments, that he was unwilling, unrelenting, and unwilling. He was unrelenting in his position to not answer my questions. And he made it clear that he was unwilling to answer my questions in the way in which I asked them. And the proof is in the pudding, so here we go.
I want to be clear that when we talk about civilization, there is no definite example of what civilization is, right? I mean, there are some authors that are going to say that civilization is marked by certain things. They sometimes talk about the technical advancements of a civilization. They sometimes talk about writing. They often talk about literature. They often talk about architecture. They talk about social organization. Can a society become a more urban society? These are the sorts of things that we often hear with regard to what the markers of civilization are. And so that is part of what I would have to say to you. And I also want to say, you know, I'm going to push back on this, Ian. You know this. Often we have this conversation juxtaposing Sumer and Kemet. And I'm going to just say there is a reason why the people who are Hebrew Israel.
Okay, so I want to stop that briefly again, just to once more point out that Jabari's not answering the question. You know, and again, it's the prerogative of the person answering the question to answer any way in which they choose. However, it's also the prerogative of the audience, the viewing audience, to rule, to pass judgment on that person for not answering the question, right? Just because a question is asked doesn't mean a person has to answer it. You're absolutely right, Jabari. However, the viewing audience now has every right to cast judgment and point out, why isn't this person answering the question? If he holds the position that Kemet, as he says, his words, is much older than Sumer or the early Mesopotamian civilization, then why wouldn't you jump and answer my question with ease, right? If it's so much older, I'm going to argue that it's probably very easy to prove as well. So what's the apprehension on his part, right? If my argument holds no weight, holds no water, then why? Somebody make it make sense. So from the very beginning, I think it's clear to everybody that has watched this debate in full, and to those of you who will watch some of it on this live stream, let's be clear. The very fact that Jabari refused to answer these basic questions speaks towards A, the fact that he was severely unprepared to even have a discussion on it, and B, his unwillingness, as it were, to even attempt to come close to addressing all parts of my questions. And I'm going to say, for the sake of the fact that he knows that once he addresses all of my questions in full, it would actually reveal the truths that I've been saying. So I'm going to allow this to play some more. And here we go.
The lights have become focused on Sumer. And one of the reasons why they become focused on Sumer is because of a bit of myth. I'm going to call it myth. A bit of myth in the biblical, in the Judeo-Christian narrative about the origin of Abraham. That's really where it comes from. So one of the reasons why folks in the Hebrew Israelite community continue to mention that is because in some ways what they're doing is they're trying to say the origins of the biblical narrative, the origin of the Torah narrative, the origin of the Judeo-Christian people actually precedes ancient Kemet. And so that's part of the strategy. And so I would be really unseasoned not to acknowledge that that's part of your strategy, Zion. And I'm going to say to you that
let me respond live to what Jabari said by first saying, no duh. Of course that is part of my strategy. But it's the same strategy that you're using as well. You see, this is why I don't understand how people in these type of intellectual spaces, how they move in real time. Because they'll get mad at you when you respond with the same energy, right? or they'll get mad at you when you use the same tactic that they themselves are employing and using, which to me is crazy, because Jabari and many other Kemetic practitioners hold that the people of Kemet have their origin in the Great Lakes region, which is where we can find the origin of man in general. Let's be clear on that. That's what they hold. So it's his ultimate position to not only posit that Kemet begins civilization, but he's going to show that there's a connectivity ancestrally between the people of Kemet and the start of mankind. That's his agenda, right? I don't have an agenda. I just want to tell history as it is, right? But I do want to respond briefly to him and say, no, duh. I'm just trying to figure out, why is he attempting to point out the obvious when he's doing the exact same thing? But here we go.
In order for that strategy to really make good sense, what you have to do is you have to also acknowledge that you have to believe that the story of Abraham coming from Ur of Chaldea is one that is recoverable as a historical narrative, and not just something that we should see as a mythological narrative. And I would say to you that there are many biblical scholars who no longer believe that that story of Abraham coming from Ur of Chaldea is valid, and they even question whether Abraham is a literal historical person. Having said all that,
so I just want to bring to everybody's attention that literally 3 minutes into Jabari's response, he's talking about Abraham and not addressing the question of how old Kemet is when Kemet becomes a civilization, right? So, I mean, certain things just kind of answer, what's really going on for you if we're paying attention. Clearly, he's avoiding answering the question, because to answer the question would admit defeat to the point that I'm making. Because once we talk about the academic consensus for when Kemet becomes a civilization, he's cut, he's done. Because the academic consensus for when Kemet comes into civilization is 3100 BC. I would argue and differ from the academic consensus, not greatly, but slightly. And I would say arguably it's probably closer to 3200 BC, right? Maybe even 33 with certain components, right? But certainly we know that all components necessary to make a civilization, Kemet achieves that in 3100 BC with the unification of Kemet by Narmer. I'm going to go heavy into that in a couple of moments, but I just want to state that from the outset. And here we go.
I want to say that there are people who like to place Sumer above Kemet for some interesting reasons. I think that their attempt to elevate Sumer over Kemet is faulty. One of the reasons.
Okay, I'm just going to fast forward this for a moment to the point where we're talking about culture, because Jabari doesn't understand that culture precedes civilization. And I'm going to be showing that on my screen in a couple of moments. But I first want everybody to have him on the record, right? Knowing that this is what he said. So just check us out for a second.
It sounded like you were saying that Nabta Playa is a
civilization. When is a question of time, right? You failed to give us time. So that's why I'm
they often mention literature, they often mention architecture. You spoke for like 45 minutes in the beginning with me saying nothing. So
we don't say that's cap.
Let's be fair. When we talk about civilization, only one of us has shown a definition, and one of us told you what the hallmarks are. I mentioned them. You have to listen carefully. I said they often mention literature, they often mention architecture, they often mention connections to the sciences. They often talk about a social organization and the establishment of urban centers. They talk about how I said that very clearly.
The problem that you're not internalizing is my question was a threefold question.
Okay.
I said, when does Kemet become a civilization? When is a question of time, right? You failed to give us time. So that's why I'm needing to answer the question again. So let me just get that out. The question I asked you was a 3-part question. The question is, hold on, Jabari. Let's be fair. Let me just get this point out, because I need to validate why it is that I need to re-ask the question. So I'm going to stop there to also point out what I think also should be obvious. Jabari is really so stuck on himself that he will literally interrupt you while you're talking, which is what he's doing now. But you'll notice that the moment that I pay that back, I respond the same way. I interrupt him while he's talking. Now there's outrage. I can't believe Zion would interrupt me, but you guys literally watched him interrupt me several times as I was speaking. And when I did the same thing to him, he threw a whole fit. So this is what I say about the egomaniac personalities in the conscious community, that the things that they do is just crazy to me, right? They get mad when you respond with energy that they initiated. They get mad when you do what they do. It just goes to show you that this is really an ego-driven community on behalf of many of the leaders, teachers, and speakers, right? Because at the bare minimum, what people should be able to do is to allow people to speak, right? When you see me cutting him off, it's because he had already cut me off several times during the dialogue, which is why when he brings up that I cut him off, I said, well, you cut me off several times, which you guys are seeing for yourself right now, right? So I just want to point some of those things out, and we'll jump right back in. Let me just get this point out if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
The question I asked you, very specific again, I'll say, when does Kemet become a civilization? So that involves time. What are you looking at when you determine that Kemet is an older civilization,
right,
than Sumer? And then what are the hallmarks of civilization? So you began to give us some of the hallmarks of civilization. You did not give us a time that Kemet becomes a civilization, nor did you definitively show us that Kemet has the hallmarks that you named in time to make it slightly or much older than Sumer. So that's my pushback for you.
Well, let me say this to you. Clearly, you have some things that you want to cover, right? And I'm not sure if you think that. I told you I don't have slides, right? I told you I don't.
Yeah, and we're gonna be fair. So I don't. Oh man, this guy is a really hilarious person. The more you get to know him. So if you guys know or may not know, me and Jabari was actually supposed to have this discussion, which was originally supposed to be a debate, over a full year ago. In fact, let me reshare my screen for a second. I'm going to stop and reshare my screen so I can show you how long ago approximately myself and Jabari was supposed to have this discussion. Okay. If everybody looks at the screen, it says the House of Consciousness in the Big League presents The Origin of Civilization, Sumer or Kemet, Thursday, January 26, 8 p.m. Eastern. I want everybody to notice something. That's in January. Me and Jabari were supposed to have a debate on this topic January 26. I want everybody to just pull up their calendars really quick. I want everybody to go all the way back to January for a second, because I want to show you something. Because I want you to see that January 26 is of this year, 2023. We are now in October. I believe that would be a 9-month difference between January and October. The debate that myself and Jabari was supposed to have was supposed to be Thursday, January 26, which means Jabari was supposed to have all of his slides as his presentation for the debate, because we don't have a debate without slides. You guys never see Jabari debate and there's no PowerPoint presentation. So that means by Thursday of January 26, 2023, Jabari was supposed to have his PowerPoint presentation ready. However, this week in October, Jabari complains that he doesn't have any slides. So this is what I mean when I say a lot of the people in this community are just full of shit. And I just hope why people understand why it is that I need to say things in the way that I need to say them. Because there's just no other way to describe what people are at times except to be brutally honest. He's full of shit. Because he was going to debate me Thursday, January 26th, which he would have had PowerPoint slides ready. And even if he needed to update his slides because he realized that he wanted to add more or take away something, he would still have slides to show, which goes to show you that he's full of it. Now, mind you, the presentation that you guys are looking at right now, it's from my PowerPoint that what I was going to do on January 26th. I never updated a single slide. The slide that I showed on Sonata TV just a couple of days ago is from the PowerPoint presentation that I have on the screen. And by the way, what I have on the screen is a PowerPoint presentation where I talk about multiple things as I began to show, right? So you guys see me flipping back and forth. This is all part of my PowerPoint presentation. So in our dialogue that we had just the other day, I decided to just pull up from the PowerPoint presentation that I had because I figured it was fair to do, right? Especially because he asked me several times in the dialogue, he challenged me. He said, I'm the only one that's talking about dates and I'm the only one that's given a definition for civilization. You, on the other hand, are not saying anything. So that's when I said, all right, let me put some slides on the screen. Apparently that was too much for him because the moment I began to put some slides on the screen, we all saw what happened next. Jabari lost it. He said it was ambush scholarship. Somebody please make it make sense. How is it ambush scholarship when you ask me to show and prove what I'm saying, and then I show and prove what I'm saying, and you say it's ambush scholarship? This is why I honestly can't find a better term other than to tell you that some of your favorite personalities on YouTube are literally full of shit. There's just no other way. All right? There's just no other way. So I'm going to play a little bit more and then I'm going to go into teaching mode. So here we go. I don't need to bring out all my slides because I'm a fair debater. But here, right? If you don't have all of your slides ready, I don't need to show.
But here,
and mind you, to be fair, just before I showed my slides, as you all heard me say, I said there's no need for me to bring out all of my slides. I have well over 50 slides. I showed about 6 slides that night, maybe 7. How is that all of my slides? How was that ambush scholarship? Somebody please make it make sense.
Hear what I'm saying. This has been a back and forth. You asked me a 3-part question.
Yes.
And I gave you a short answer, and then I was talking too long. So if you want me to give you dates, I can give you some dates. You said that I did not mention, I did not tell you what civilization was. I think you should acknowledge now that I did.
No. I didn't say that you didn't acknowledge what civilization was. I said you didn't acknowledge the time because my question simply wasn't what makes Kemet a civilization. Does Kemet become a civilization? So that your answer needs to include time.
But wait a minute.
All right. I'm going to forward that a little bit because I want to go into teaching mode and just correct Jabari on several things that he said. If you guys watch the dialogue, you know that Jabari said that Kemet as a civilization, we can start talking about Kemet as a civilization by looking at Napa Playa. Now, he interestingly says we can start there, even though that's where he really wanted to land. I'm going to play it from there, and then I'm going to go straight into teaching mode. Here we go.
Excellence in astronomy, a field of science, before we see it anywhere else in the world. This is one of the things that helps us put a marker, a pin down in civilization on the continent of Africa and in Kemet.
All right. Thank you for that, Jabari. Thank you. So I'm going to begin my rebuttal now. And here is where I begin to get interesting. And here's where we begin to cook. Jabari, Napa Playa is not only not Kemet, but let me also say this to you. The hallmarks of civilization that you named, none of them are present in Napa Playa. So that's actually going to be one of the biggest kill shots of the night. because you go to Nabta Playa in order to prove that Kemet is an older civilization than Sumer, when Nabta Playa itself doesn't have any of the aforementioned hallmarks of civilization that you just named, not a single one, which is interesting because it's showing me that you're not reading enough material to even have the conversation. And that's why you literally stalled for 20 minutes because you don't know what to go to. So I'm going to lead the conversation and lead the charge and show you where you should be going. So let me share my screen. Sonetta, as my share screen comes on, can you please share my screen, good brother?
I'm waiting. No, bro. I see it. There you go.
And as the chat is saying, Jabari did this to himself. Here we go. I have a timeline up, right? Something that to rebut what I'm saying. So he's on Google, he's on astronomy.com because he doesn't know how to respond effectively to what I'm saying. So I'm going to go light on him and I'm going to say this. The earliest civilization when it comes to Egypt, right, is around 3100 BCE to 3300 BCE. That's the earliest time period that we can call Kemet Sonnet, because you just have my presentation, but I want people to be able to see my delivery and they should also be able to see Jabari's face. All right, I'm going to stop that video there and I'm simply going to say, if anybody wants to watch the full video, you can either watch it on Sonnet TV or you can see the edited version on my channel, right? I cut out all of the drama at the end where we're arguing back and forth, and I stuck to the presentation. So if you guys want to see the edited version where we're just debating about the topic, you could go to my channel. If you want to watch the full unedited version, you could go on Sonnet's channel. In the meantime, though, I'm going to unshare my screen because I want to explain some things for a second. There we go. I'm going to show you a picture of Nabta Playa on the map for a moment. Jabari wants to make Nabta Playa part of Egyptian civilization. And I'm going to first show you why that is extremely incorrect and, even more importantly, problematic. So let me take off some of this stuff on the screen. Also, by the way, family, do remember we don't run and operate on air. So show your love to the platform by donating. You guys see the Cash App up. You see the PayPal up. Also, keep in mind that we do have classes all throughout the week. Make sure you go to our website, which is patreon.com/Torah. That's patreon.com/learn Torah. Also, there's other ways that you can support apart from actually donating. Thumb up the video and share the live stream. That always works. There's a lot of people, as I continually mention, that tell me that they don't get the notification. So make sure you hit the subscribe and make sure you hit that notification bell that we have, right? Let's go full throttle. So I want everybody to look at the map and first begin to understand why it is that I said to Jabari that, first of all, Nabta Playa, which is right here by my arrow, is not even Egypt. I want everybody to notice that in the bottom right corner, and you'll see it in a couple of seconds as my screen, there we go. The bottom right corner shows you that Nabta Playa is situated adjacent to the Nubian desert. On the modern Egyptian maps, Nabta Playa is considered part of Egypt because the boundaries for Egypt today are much longer than it was at various times. Now, let's be clear on something. The boundaries of Egypt change over the course of time, in part depending upon who's ruling it, obviously. And that's how boundaries work. Boundaries are etched and placed in land based on who's ruling and what land they acquire, what land they lose, etc., etc. When you look at the old maps of ancient Egypt, you'll notice that Nabta Playa is not part of Egypt proper. It's part of Nubia, which Nubia is its own kingdom and even at one point becomes its own empire, right? Yes, we can see that there is a significant measure of Egyptian culture that has its origin in Nubian culture, but we must still make a difference between speaking of Egypt, which is Kemet, and Nubia. Remember, everybody, it's the topic of the conversation that makes for whether a person is winning a dialogue or winning a debate. The question is, when does Kemet become a civilization? Nubia is not Kemet, and that's where Nabta Playa is situated. But even if we go to Nubia, one of the things that you'll see is greatly lacking in Nubia is all of the necessary hallmarks, or what we call signs of civilization. So Jabari, as I said during the live stream, was wrong on multiple levels. And what I meant when I said he was wrong on multiple levels is, not only is he wrong for trying to include ancient Nabta Playa as being part of Egypt or part of Kemet, but he's even wrong in trying and attempting to call Nabta Playa a civilization, because it is not. You will see some Afrocentrists refer to Nabta Playa as a civilization. I say some because not all do that, but you will see some. But when they do it, they're wrong, right? You can't place Egypt as a civilization before 3100 or 3300 BC. It's impossible. If that was the case, the history books would be rewritten. If that was the case, all of modern academia, all of modern scholarship would place Egypt as being older than Sumer. Now, there's something that Jabari does very often when people have discussions with him. Jabari likes to treat his opinions as if every scholar alive rides with him and he's with academia and everybody's wrong. So if you notice during our dialogue, Jabari continually said, there are some people who are saying that, Sumer is earlier than Kemet, and that's because they're looking at proto-Sumer and they're just looking at Kemet when Kemet becomes a unified state, right? But that's not what we should do. We should look at Kemet also in her proto-state. And when we do that, that's when we begin to see that Kemet is, be quiet, because you sound silly. Let me explain something really quick. And here is where I go into teaching mode. And I wasn't initially going to do this, but it's necessary to do what I'm going to do right here. So allow me really quick to pull up what I'm going to show on the screen in a couple of seconds. An ancient Egyptian artifact that many of you are already familiar with. And those of you who aren't, you will get somewhat familiar with throughout the course of this presentation. But here we go. Let me explain to Jabari, because I believe most people know this, but evidently Jabari doesn't. So I'm going to explain it to him as I'm speaking to you guys. So allow me to cook. Allow me to cook. Right? What we're looking at on the screen, everybody, is called the Narmer palette. It's called the Narmer palette, right? Let me show you guys something. Let me hit to a quick commercial break. Thumb up the video, share the live stream, guys. I will be right back.
What Hebrew Israelite you think is the best though?
The best?
Allah.
I think Captain, as far as the debate, is the epitome in the One West community.
I agree. I think
Zion is a very good debater. If he wants to do the whole Sumer thing or whatever, we could chop it up after the book. I mean, it's up to him.
Now, as far as the true scholarship, I got to go with Zion Lex on that.
I don't know about true scholarship, but hey, that's
I'm talking about as far as Hebrew Israelites. I'm going with Zion with the scholarship.
I would go with Divine.
If I was to say Hebrew against Hebrew, I would have to go with Zion Lex.
Well, I'll go with Divine. I think Divine is more thorough. As far as a debater, Zion is the best. Zion and Captain is the best, no doubt.
Okay.
No doubt in my mind. That boy Zion, oh man, he gonna chop this video up, by the way, too. He gonna chop it up, put it on his timeline. You see what Garfield said? When it comes to that debating from the Hebrews, ain't nobody better than Zion and Captain. I'm just gonna say that.
All right, let me say to Garfield, you damn right I was going to chop that video up. Thank you very much for that mention. You damn right I was going to chop that video up. I'm glad you know. So what I was trying to show you guys on the screen, but I'll even show you in person, is something called the Narmer palette. Right? That's the Narmer palette. Right? This is the obverse, and this would be the reverse. Right? This is the back of it, and this right here is the front of it. All right? Everybody can see that. It's Narmer palette. All right? I wish I could just pull out PDFs, but I'm different from a lot of these people out here. I really do have a fascination and maybe even an obsession with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So Jabari apparently doesn't like when I say that, but I'm trying to figure out why. Let me be nice. Let me be nice. Here we go. If you look at the Narmer palette, what the Narmer palette commemorates is the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt in 3100 BCE. There are some scholars that argue that the number might be closer to 3200. Of course, Afrocentrists, many Afrocentrist scholars that go into ancient Kemet, they would argue for the extreme number, right? They would argue for 3300 BC. But most scholars hold that it's 3100 BC, with some yielding to 32. And of course, many Afrocentrists that go to the extreme, which is 3300, right? But the academic consensus is that Narmer's palette commemorates the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt in 3100 BC. So let me first show you guys why Jabari is out of whack and completely scholastically unfounded and confounded for saying that Kemet is a civilization from since the Nabta Playa era, which is 7500 BC. No human being alive in academia is teaching that Kemet is a civilization in 7500 BCE. Guys, if Kemet was a civilization in 7500 BCE, every website you went to right now online would tell you that Kemet is the oldest civilization. Because now that's placing Kemet in the Neolithic era, which no scholar regards civilization as starting in. Civilization starts in what's called the Bronze Age, 3500 BC. But Jabari wanted to convince the House of Consciousness audience, which, you know, it can be successful convincing that audience, let's say. I'll be nice. He can be successful in convincing that audience, right? But when you speak to people who have common sense and people who really study, then you know that no human being alive, while being an academic, would ever say that Kemet is a civilization in 7500 BC. It's ludicrous, it's what it is. But I'm going to really cook on this one, so I need my full share screen to show. Okay. So I want everybody to look very carefully at some things that I'm going to literally use my arrow and point to. So on the front side of the palette, you see Narmer. Narmer is holding a mace, and he's standing profile in what's known as the smiting pose, right? You find this pose in stylistic or stylized art all throughout Egyptian monarchy, all throughout Egyptian eras of kingship, from the Old Kingdom to the Middle Kingdom to the New Kingdom, or as Mfudiji would say, from the first golden era to the second golden era to the third golden era. You find many stylistic artistic renditions of Egyptian kings or Kemetic kings in what's called the smiting pose. Narmer has on his head the white crown, which is symbolic of Upper Egypt, which for modern day sake, that's the bottom part of Egypt that we can look at a map and see today, right? The white crown also in the Medu Neter is called the Hedjet, which is the Medu Neter term for white, right? So the white crown is also called Hedjet, which again is the Medu Neter term for white crown. If you notice, to the right of Narmer, he's grasping the hair of his enemy, right? The hair of his enemy. The peoples, and this is where things get real interesting, everybody. The peoples that Narmer needs to defeat in order to unite Upper and Lower Egypt are Asiatics. I hope everybody's listening to me carefully. They are Asiatics. And that's not because I say so. That's because you literally can open up Sheikh Anti-Geob's book and see exactly what I just told you. That the people who are uniting Upper and Lower Egypt with Narmer, they do so by defeating Asiatics. All right, so that's very, very important. So that means Lower Egypt, which for modern day sake is the top portion of Egypt that we look at today on the map, it was ruled by Asiatics, right? So-called foreigners, right? I say that term so-called for several reasons, right? But watch where things get interesting. Because how can Narmer represent the Nabta Playa civilization, which Jabari wants you to believe is all of Kemet, when he had to kill thousands of people in Lower Egypt in order to unite these two regions? So obviously, even in 33 and 3100 BC, Kemet, as we know it today, was a divided state. So why is Jabari saying that this divided state is a civilization, when we know that Kemet does not have all of the hallmarks of civilization before this time period? So just to make it clear for Jabari and the HOK audience, the reason why academics charge and hold that the unification of Narmer is when Kemet becomes a civilization is because that's when all of the hallmarks necessary to refer to a culture as a civilization is prevalent and pronounced in Egypt or Kemet. That's why. Now, many Afrocentrists want you to believe that the reason is because they're racist. And we won't deny that racism exists. But unfortunately, that's not the reason. That's not the reason. Racism is not the reason, right? So I'll say this again. The Narmer palette is proof that Egypt was not always a unified state. More than that, the Narmer palette is proof that a major portion of Egypt did not belong to or was not ruled by or even in majority peopled by people of Kemetic origin. The people who lived in the top part of Egypt, which Egyptians refer to as Lower Egypt, they were Asiatics. We know that not just because of the material culture in the form of physical artifacts, but even from the comparison of bones that are in the ground. We know that the people who inhabited Lower Egypt are Western Asiatics. We know this to be a fact. And this is why on the Narmer palette, the people depicted as the conquered people on the palette are depicted the same exact way that Asiatics are. So we know for a fact that in order for Narmer, who comes from the south, to unite Upper and Lower Egypt, he has to defeat the people who are ruling the larger part of Egypt, which is deeply problematic for Jabari, because how are you even attempting to say that Egypt is a civilization before the unification, when before the unification there wasn't even any place called Egypt, Jabari? Whether we talk about its original term, Het Ka Ptah, whether we talk about the term Kemet, none of those titles, none of those appellations were even used to describe the region. More importantly, none of the people that can be regarded as being of Kemetic stock and origin ruled both Upper and Lower Egypt at the time that Jabari is saying that Egypt is a civilization, 7500 BC. That's why this is so ludicrous and silly, because there is no Egypt or Kemet in 7500 BC. Let me startle the community, some of the community, when I say this. At the time that Narmer unites Egypt, Egypt is not even known as Kemet. The term Kemet is not used to describe the people until the beginning of the Middle Kingdom period, circa 2000 BC. That's important when we talk about the knowledge base when it comes to connecting Kemet as a civilization. That's extremely important. The very term Kemet, the black land, right, is not used to describe the people until the early Middle Kingdom period. You find Brother Reggie arguing in favor of that. You find Ankh arguing in favor of that, right? There was even a debate between Asar Imhotep, right, and many of the great Kemetic teachers, right, that were talking about when does Kemet receive the name Kemet, and when do the people receive the name Kemet. That does not happen in the Old Kingdom period, and it certainly does not happen in the era of Narmer. So Jabari, as I was pointing out in my dialogue with him, which we're going to call the debate, he was losing on multiple levels by trying to say that Kemet is a civilization in 7500 BC, when even in 3100 BC, which is where scholars argue that Kemet becomes a civilization, they're still not even called Kemet yet. It's not even a debate. Sumer is older, easily. Common sense. Common sense. So what else happened in the dialogue that I had with Jabari should interest some people as well. Before I go into something that I really want to spend considerable time on, shout out to my brother Ari Ryder. I see you, Aki. Shout out to you. Shout out to everybody in Detroit. Shout out to our Detroit Hebrews. Shout out to the family in the Midwest. Salute to you, Aki. All right. Before I go to where I really want to go to and spend some considerable time, I want to pull up something on the screen really quick, just for the sake of clarity and definitions. Because Jabari apparently is being allowed to get away with, because he's speaking to a very silly audience in a very silly community. And he's being allowed to get away with teaching that it is the current academic stance that Egypt is much older than Sumer. Why do I say that? Because that's what Jabari said. Jabari said in our dialogue, there are some people that are still saying that Sumer is much older than Kemet. But no scholars is really saying that anymore. Guys, if you guys watched the dialogue that I had with Jabari the other day, and you all heard Jabari say, some scholars regard Sumer as older than Egypt, but most scholars today aren't saying that. I want everybody to put a 1 in the chat room real quick, right? We want to be fair. We don't want people to think that we're railroading them, right? If that's what Jabari said, put a 1. If he did not say that, put a 2. Let's be fair. By the way, we got the video so we can pull it up. All right. So Jabari says, thank you, that some scholars are saying that Sumer is an older civilization, but most scholars today aren't saying that. Let me show you guys something. I'm going to take an article that I'm about to show you right now, and I'm going to put that in the live chat, because I want you to see that this article is updated. It's from 2023. And the article comes from history.com. The article comes from history.com. And it talks about 6 early human civilizations. Let me blow up the screen some more, just to show everybody how updated this article is. All right. Does everybody notice that the original article was posted August 9th, 2022, yet it was updated June 6, 2023. Can everybody see that on the screen? So this is updated, right? It was originally posted on August 9th, 2022, and it was updated June 6, 2023. That's just 3-4 months ago. That's 4 months ago. Jabari says some scholars say that Sumer is older, but most scholars today say the opposite. Let me show y'all something real quick, because here is how you catch a liar. Jabari didn't like me calling him a liar because he's an egomaniac and he likes to think that he's not. But he's a liar. And here we go. 6 early human civilizations, architecture, agriculture, art, and more first blossom in these cultures. While modern civilizations, let me see if I could blow this up a little bit more because I want everybody to be able to. There we go. Come on. Come on. Huh? I want everybody to read with me. While modern civilizations extend to every continent except Antarctica, most scholars place the earliest cradles of civilization, in other words, where civilizations first emerged, in modern day Iraq, Egypt, India, China, Peru, Mexico, beginning between approximately 4000 and 3000 BC. Can everybody see that with their own eyes? This is crazy, y'all. Because we should not be debating what is common knowledge. There are some things in common knowledge that needs to be updated, but to the extent in this conversation, this is crazy. This is literally crazy. So I want everybody to see this really quick. Well, modern civilizations, you have Iraq, Egypt, India, China, Peru, and Mexico being slated as the earliest cradles of civilization. And I want everybody to see the timeline between 4000 and 3000 BC. So somebody please tell me why on planet Earth, why is it that Jabari tried to convince the HOK audience that Egypt is a civilization in 7500 BC when the modern and updated scholarly consensus, which by the way has been so for a very long time, posits that the earliest civilizations begin between 4000 and 3000 BC. This is why I said to y'all, if Jabari is right, then what he's saying would be an innovation and it would literally have to change every single history book. Because it means everybody's wrong and Jabari's right. Right? He wants you to believe the opposite is true. Everybody's wrong and Zion's right. Right? That's what he says. But he says Egypt is a civilization through Nabta Playa in 7500 BC. What scholar, forget scholar, what human being alive with a degree that knows something about history would say that there's an actual civilization in 7500 BC? Are you kidding me? So let's continue reading. These ancient complex societies, starting with who? Mesopotamia. Next time I go live, I'm gonna have some bombs. You know, I took away the bombs because some of y'all started to complain, but I'm gonna be a little selfish on this one because I've been dropping stuff lately that is very bomb worthy, and some of you been complaining why I'm not dropping bombs, and that's because some of y'all was complaining that I'm dropping bombs. So I'm gonna bring back the bombs, but I want everybody to notice it says these ancient complex societies, starting with Mesopotamia, I'll keep reading, formed cultural and technological advances, several of which are still present today. A great many of the details of modern life, not just in the Middle East and the West, but across the world, have origins that go back for thousands of years to the ancient cultures in their respective regions, says Amanda Podeny, author and professor emeritus of history at California State Polytechnic University. Let's keep reading. Here's a look at 6 of the earliest civilizations and the legacies they left to the world. Can everybody see with their own eyes what's first on that list? You know, this is the point where I literally drop the mic and walk away as we take a quick commercial break.
The way to whoever wrote those Hebrew writings was smarter than anybody we have ever met in our life.
Why you say that?
Because when I'm studying the writing, and they have what's called, they have idioms. They have idioms, family. They have metaphors. They have epithets. Epithets is like, say, El is the God. So you'll have El Elyon. El Elyon would be probably, no, that's not a good example. But just different names of that same God would be an epithet of that God. They have epithets. They have idioms. Who does that if you're not intelligent? I know that, but I'm just saying they had some sort of numerology in there. When you see Zion going into the whole gematria stuff, that's later on, but they did have some sort of gematria in numeric, alphanumeric thing going. I'm saying this to everybody who is in Kemet. We know how great Kemet is, but whoever wrote the text, whoever wrote that Bible is smart as a mother effer.
All right. Thumb up the video, guys, and share the live stream. Thumb up the video and share the live stream. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell. I always say, especially in our classes, Learn Torah Hebrew Academy, the work is easy when you're well studied. The work is easy when you're well studied. What are we even talking about here? You guys got to understand that I'm entering a debate where all of academia agrees with me and virtually no one agrees with Jabari. I'm going to say it again. I'm entering a debate where all of academia agrees with me and virtually nobody agrees with Jabari, because here's one thing I wanted to ask Jabari, but towards the end, it started to get so silly that I was just completely uninterested in having a dialogue with a grown man who admitted that he refused to answer questions, right? And then, of course, when I left the live stream, oh, Zion is running. No, I'm not running. It's frustrating as a grown man when another grown man agrees to have a conversation with you where we get to ask each other questions, and one of those grown men admits that he is not going to answer the other person's questions. So yeah, at that point, what am I doing there? Like, I'm not here to hear you talk because you don't have much to say. You certainly don't have much to teach me. So what are we doing? Right? What are we doing? So I want to be clear on something, everybody. Scholars don't agree with Jabari. In fact, Jabari has no academic citation, none, that says Egypt is a civilization through Nabta Playa, and therefore the origins of Egyptian civilization can be traced back to Nabta Playa. Y'all want a bomb? I got a bomb for y'all in the form of a question and a challenge for Jabari. Jabari, can you show us one source, just one? The Torah and the Bible says 2 witnesses establish a matter, but you say you don't follow the Torah, so I won't hold you to such a high threshold. Can you show us one source in academia that posits that Kemet is the oldest civilization because she is connected to Nabta Playa, which goes back to 7500 BC. Therefore, we can now rewrite the history books and posit that Kemet is the oldest civilization by more than 4,000 years old than the rest. Show us one source for that. Just one. Am I asking for too much, y'all? Just one. Am I asking for too much? Just one. Show us a consensus of scholars that are positing that Kemet is a civilization in 7500 BCE. Show us. That doesn't exist. So at that point, Jabari, when you say that you are the African historian and Zion is the Torah practitioner, we're going to need you to hand in whatever credentials from whatever school of thought told you, and we know it was you that told yourself, whatever school of thought told you, and we know it was you that taught and told yourself this, that you are an African historian. Because while you might have some knowledge of Africa, you cannot be called a historian if you don't also understand the difference between culture and civilization, which is something I'm going to point out in the next couple of moments. But before I do that, I do want to read from the screen. My brother R.E. Ryder says, Sumer is 4500 BCE, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. But ancient Egyptian civilization is dated to 3100 BC, making it younger than Sumer and making Sumer therefore older than Egypt or Kemet. Easy. Easy. You know, the fact that Jabari does this to the HOK community should be insulting to the HOK community, because Jabari wouldn't even be allowed to teach this in the academies that he teaches in. You think Jabari could get on a stage and show us in his school that he's teaching the children that Kemet is a civilization in 7500 BCE and they're not firing him immediately for being pseudo? So why are you coming here teaching us things you know you can't teach in an academic setting? And I get how sometimes it can be problematic to teach Afrocentric history properly in certain settings, but this is not the case here, because they believe Egyptians are white. So when you tell them that Egyptian society and civilization dates back to 7500 BCE, they'll accept that if there's proof there, because regardless of what Jabari thinks, they think Egyptians were originally white. So Jabari, they're not going to hide from what could be true because of the color of the Egyptians, because they believe regardless that they think Egyptians are white. So if there's enough information that says that Egypt dates back to 7500 BCE, they would be all on it because they already think Egypt is is white. So there would be no need to pull the veil or the wool over people's eyes. Now let me finish sharing the screen and going through this work, because we're going to read through this. It's going to be easy, guys. Mesopotamia, 4000 to 3500 BCE. Between the two rivers, the culture that grew up between the Tigris and Euphrates River is noted for important advancements in literacy, astronomy, agriculture, law, astronomy, mathematics, architecture, and more. Despite near constant warfare, they're doing that even while in the midst of having wars with each other. Right? Mesopotamia, this is a quote, is the earliest urban literate civilization on the globe. Everybody see that for themselves? Mesopotamia is the earliest urban literate civilization on the globe. Can everybody see that for themselves? So why are we even here today? Why should this even be a discussion? This is crazy. Let me continue. Right? Let me continue. Scroll down. Who is number 2 at the list? And when do scholars hold that they become a civilization? Oh, ancient Egypt is on the list. And when are scholars saying that ancient Egypt is a civilization? Oh, 3100 BC. I'll say it once, I'll say it twice. The work is easy when you're well studied. The work is easy when you're well studied. Jabari tried to cheat on the exam, on the tests, as I pointed out. He knows he cannot effectively and academically prove that Kemet or Egypt is an older civilization than that of Sumer. So what does he do? What I expected him to do. He cheats. He goes into an earlier culture along the track of the Nile in the region of Nubia, which is not part of Kemet, originally speaking. And he uses their antiquity, the fact that they are a culture and are beginning to be somewhat of a sedentary society around 7500 BCE. He uses that to say, see, Kemet is a civilization in 7500 BC when we consider Nabta, Playa. Guys, every time you guys see Jabari on anybody's podcast, make sure you write in the comments as he's speaking, Jabari the pseudo, because that should be his name going forth. because there's no academic alive that would tell you that ancient Egypt can be placed as a civilization in 7500 BC by way of Nabta Playa. That's just not happening in academia. That's happening on Sonata Studios, right? That's happening on HOK, but that's not happening in academia. And while we're on that, I'm not trying to diss Sonata, but obviously Sonata tells you, and this is actually giving respect to Sonata, before these weirdos get on Sonata's channel, you know what Sonata has? He has a disclaimer up. And you know what Sonata says? The views of these people on the platform do not necessarily represent the views of Sonata Studios or the HOK. Sonata rightfully needs to have that, because some of the people he has championing on that site is literally out of their minds with certain claims that they're making. Egypt is a civilization in 7500 BCE by way of Nabta Playa. Who, where, when, what, why? Because why? Because why? Who's saying that? This is crazy. This is crazy. Let me show you guys a definition. All right? All right, let me show you guys a definition. And by the way, I'll even go to another website, because even though Jabari does not go by two witnesses establish a matter, I'm a Hebrew, I'm an Israelite, I do. So I will go and pull up another source. But before I do that, I want to read Cam Eved Israel. He says, Jabari teaches at the university for a check, but he debates with Morey Zion Lex to get checked. God damn. God damn. He said Jabari teaches at the university for a check, but he debates with Morey Zion Lex to get checked. That's crazy. Let me say this. Shalom, Prince. I see you. Prince Aziel says Egyptomaniacs. While you're saying that, on that thought, let me hold up this book. Everybody get this book. It'll explain the current obsession among a segment of Afrocentrists in the community who are obsessed with ancient Egypt to the extent that they will go out of their way, if need be, even lying, to make themselves actual Egyptians. The book is called Egyptomania. Make sure you get the book by Ronald H. Fritz. A History of Fascination, Obsession. Jabari says that being a Hebrew is mythical and Abraham is mythical. Well, being an Egyptomaniac means that you believe in fantasy and myths as well. So let me just point the people towards that. Jabari doesn't like that I read books, but I hope you guys appreciate that I read books. So get the book Egyptomania and see why it is that there's a growing segment of Afrocentrists that their fascination and obsession with Egypt has led them to create fantasy, which is them parading as Egyptians. They say, show us your DNA that we know that you're Hebrews, when they can't show that they're actually Egyptians. This is crazy, y'all. But as I said to you, the work is easy when you're well studied. So let me share two more things with y'all before we bring the live stream to a close. Thumb up the video, family, and share the live stream, by the way. Thumb up the video and share the live stream. We're on a website called study.com, right? That's study.com. And I'm going to show you what it says. This is an academic website that teachers come to, students come to. You can attain college credits on here, right? By the way, while we're talking about credible websites, in talking about Napa Playa, did Jabari really take us to astronomy.com? I mean, contextually, I somewhat understand, right? Because within the context to which he wanted to evoke Nabta Playa, he wanted to talk about the stone circles, and I get the connection between that and astronomy.com. But astronomy.com is not a historical source to validate something as academic from the point of view of historians relating to civilization, right? So that's crazy. Right? And we not gonna act like we didn't see that. We got to hold him to the fact that you wildin'. Like, you just trying anything out here to make yourself Egyptian and to make yourself right. Like you literally wildin'. But here we go. Ancient civilizations in the world. By the way, unlike Jabari, I'm going to share source materials that I'm looking at, because I'm unafraid for the audience to examine why it is that I hold the views that I hold. And that's why it cares to me to hold books and show books too, so that people can examine why it is that I hold the views that I hold. So I just took the link, right, to this academic website that I'm on, right? Study.com, because I want everybody to be able to, on their own time, assess what I'm about to read for you right now. We're looking at, on study.com, ancient civilizations of the world. I'm sure that we're about to see Nabta Playa in 7500 BC and Egypt being the oldest civilization. I'm almost sure we're about to see that. Let me see if I'm wrong. I could be wrong. I've been listening a lot to Jabari lately, so I could be wrong. But let's see. It says, let me make sure you guys can read everything, because my border is cutting some of this out. I don't want to do that. There we go. All right. It says, blow it up a little bit more. Ancient civilizations lay down the foundations for all later civilizations in the world. The modern world's art, architecture, literature, law, and culture can be traced directly to ancient cultures that once prospered in parts of Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Some ancient civilizations grew up in relative isolation, while others depended on developments made in earlier cultures. What's the first civilization we're looking at when we're talking about the earlier civilizations? Once again, ancient Mesopotamia. But don't believe me, let's read what it actually says. The world's oldest major urban civilization was founded where? Nabta Playa in 7500 BC. Like, this is crazy, y'all. Like, what are we even arguing about? Right? Like, what? Like, why are we even having the conversation? I'll tell you why. Because we have Egyptomaniacs running around thinking that they're actually Egyptians, thinking that they're actually half man and half animals. And this is just crazy at this point. It's literally crazy. But I'll continue reading. The world's oldest major urban civilization was founded in Mesopotamia, in the region of modern-day Iraq, situated between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. The ancient Sumerians were the first people to build cities, develop a written language, and create sophisticated works of art. Somebody please tell me. Matter of fact, if any of you can find Jabari on Facebook, please do him a favor. Give him a link to some of these articles I'm sharing with you, because it's an embarrassment for him to say that he's an African historian and he doesn't understand basic history. So let's do the right thing by everybody tagging him right now on social media and giving him correct and accurate information, right? Everybody find Jabari Osase on social media and tag him with these articles so that he doesn't continue to embarrass himself and his own community. All right, let's start there. As it says, they also invented mathematics, and what else? Astronomy. But I thought astronomy was the Nabta Playa stone circles thingies in Nubia, which Jabari says was Egypt, even though the older map showed a difference between Nubia and Egypt. I thought that was in Nabta Playa. Who invented math and astronomy? The people of Nabta Playa or the people of Mesopotamia? The Sumerians. Ancient, the work is easy when you're well studied. Ancient Sumerians existed from around 4000 BC to 1900 BC. We know a great deal about them thanks to a writing system they developed known as cuneiform. This writing made use of indentations made on clay tablets. Sumerian civilization, and here is what I was trying to explain to Jabari. Sumerian civilization was made possible by an event known as the Neolithic Revolution. The Neolithic Revolution occurred where? In Western Asia. When? 12,000 years ago. And involved the discovery of what? Agriculture. That's why, guys, I said, and I want to make sure everybody's able to see me as I say this. Does everybody notice that when I showed my slides, I showed the Natufians? There's a reason why I showed the Natufians. The Natufians are a Negroid people. They have the same DNA as each and every one of us on this live stream, E1B1A. And they are the first peoples to give us agriculture. As you're reading on the screen right now, from the Neolithic Revolution came agriculture, which gave rise to Sumerian civilization. Sumerian civilization owes its origin to those people that laid the framework, the groundwork for agriculture and a sedentary society. Those people are the Natufians, and the place that they did that is in Palestine, Israel. Allow me to share my screen and go all the way in and teach, because after all, that is something that I really came here to do today. So now let me connect with you what I was presenting with the historical record that we can see live. And here is where I begin to cook. And here is when you begin to literally feel the temperature in the room. This will be the difference between a charlatan and someone who actually knows what they're saying. And the charlatan, to be clear, is the one saying that Egypt is a civilization by way of Nabta Playa as early as 7500 BC. That would be the charlatan, and that is not my claim. That's the claim of the charlatan. So I want everybody to see this really quick. And here's where things are going to get real spicy. Let me first unshare what's on, and let me reshare. There we go. Okay. There we go. All right. You guys should be able to see that. And now that I can see that you can see it, let's cook. Let's teach. All right. So if everybody looks at my screen, minus the video that I'm showing, Egypt as a civilization becomes a civilization in 3100 BCE. So as everybody sees, the timeline that I presented for Egypt as a civilization completely agrees with the academic consensus, even as I proved throughout the course of this live stream. The academic consensus is that Egypt becomes a civilization in 3100 BCE. Don't get mad at me. Have a conversation with the consensus and offer your opinion as to why you believe the consensus is wrong. Before Egypt becomes a civilization, there are cultures that precede it. Because as I'm going to land, culture precedes civilization. Jabari argued against that and said that Zion is making things up and Zion is wrong. Culture doesn't come before civilization. Zion made that up. Yeah? Keep watching, everybody. Now, Nabta Playa is certainly placed to 7500 BCE. But I want everybody to see this. The first thing that I presented to Jabari when I began my rebuttal was a book entitled The Natufian Culture in the Levant. Why did I do that? Because I already know that academians credit the rise of Sumerian civilization to the work of the Natufians and what they did in Palestine. That's Israel. It is the work of the Natufians in Palestine, in Israel, that led to Sumer becoming the world's first civilization. And here is where check meets mate. Jabari, you don't have to wait to see where I was going with this. I'll gladly tell you before we even get there in the debate, because you cannot get around what I'm showing. And when you lie to get around it, I'm just going to bring you back in the ring and smack you up again and show that you're lying in order to get around the truth that I'm bringing. As we just read, Sumerian civilization owes its origin as the world's first civilization due to the Neolithic cultures that gave rise to agriculture. This is why I presented in my dialogue with Jabari that the oldest Neolithic group that gives us agriculture is none other than the Natufians. But more important, i.e. Israel. I hope I have everybody's undivided attention. Studies based on morphological, genetic, and archaeological data have attributed these settlements to migrants from the Fertile Crescent, bringing agriculture to the region. Ancient in the 6th century BCE. The oldest agriculture in Egypt is in the 6th century BCE. And that occurs in the Fayum Oasis. So no, they did not give the world civilization, because whoever gave the world civilization are the people who we are owed agriculture to. And that people are the Natufians. In the historical atlas of ancient civilizations, by the way, because Jabari is so upset that I have books to show to people, allow me to get the book to show you that I have the book. All right. Jabari, when I left the live stream, he brought up that Zion likes to show that he has the books. Apparently, that's a trigger for Jabari because he likes to read mostly PDFs. Mind you, let me just make my screen bigger to say something to y'all. Did y'all really allow Jabari to show you that little makeshift bookshelf in his background and the few scattered books he has in his house? Did y'all allow him to get away on that live stream when he said he had 4,000 books in his house? Do I need to make, and I will, do I need to make a video showing that Jabari says he has 4,000 books in his house? When I tell you that the marker of a person you can't trust is a cold-blooded, cold stone liar, I'm telling you, The marker of a person you cannot trust is a cold-blooded, cold-stone liar. Wait on it, guys. Later on this evening or early morning, that video is going to be the first video on my YouTube page in the morning, where Jabari says he has 4,000. Matter of fact, I want to rip him over 4,000. He said that in response to the fact that my background clearly shows that I have a lot of books. I don't even have 1,000 books. I don't even have 300 books, I don't think. I know I have well over 100 between these two bookshelves, but I don't think I have 300. Jabari has well over 1,000 books in his house. I guarantee y'all, Jabari can't walk through his house just where his books are, just showing his books. We don't want to see your house, right? For security purposes, security reasons. Just want to show you books. I guarantee you he can't show us that he has 4,000 books. Like, this is crazy. Like, why we have to lie? So anyway, the quote that I'm about to show you comes from a book entitled The Historical Atlas of Ancient Civilizations. That's the Historical Atlas of Ancient Civilizations. I like the book so much that I actually bought two. I like the book so much that I actually bought two because I plan to give away books to people who are on my Patreon, and I have a lot of great books to give away. So I plan to give away books. This is one of the books I definitely want to give away to someone on our Patreon. So as I continue. So as you guys can see on the screen, it says, the first farming societies developed in a fertile crescent, not Egypt, not Napa, Playa, the Fertile Crescent. That's on page 22 of the Historical Atlas of Ancient Civilizations. Page 22 of the Historical Atlas of Ancient Civilizations. Right? And I'll even hold it up so you can see I have it highlighted. I'll even hold it up so you can see that I have it highlighted. So here's the book. The Historical Atlas of Ancient Civilizations. And on page 22, the first farmers. All right. The first farmers. So as it says, the first farming societies developed in the Fertile Crescent. Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, Iraq, and the Persian Gulf. What did we just read a couple of moments is the reason why Sumer became the earliest civilization? The Neolithic period, guys, spans around 10,000 BC. It is due to the efforts of some group in the Neolithic period that Sumer became a civilization. Not just a civilization, but the world's first civilization. So Jabari wants to argue that if we look at the earliest culture, he calls it civilization because he doesn't know the difference between civilization and culture. But I'm going to say it correctly. Jabari argues that if you look at the earliest cultures along the track of the Nile, such as Napa, Playa, one can begin to argue that Egypt or Kemet is the oldest civilization. So what happens, and I knew he would do that, when I show the actual earliest farming culture, and that happens in the land of Israel. It is the technology and innovation produced by the indigenous population in Israel that gave rise to Sumer becoming the world's first civilization. So we're not trying to connect Abraham to Sumer because Sumer is older. We're connecting the dots to show you that one of the reasons why Abraham ventures back from Mesopotamia, as God tells him, and comes to the land of Israel, because there's a lot of innovations that occur in the land of Israel, as I'm prepared to show in my debate with Jabari. Because the earliest signs of what we call religion and spirituality today, we can also see in Israel, which I'm prepared to show Jabari in my debate. And I know that he doesn't have access to where he can find that information, because if he did, he's either hiding it or he simply doesn't know. Either way, he's not going to show it. So I know he don't have access to it, more than likely too. So I'm doing more than trying to connect Abraham with Sumer. No. Sumer becomes a civilization because of the innovations that occur in Israel. Sumer becomes a civilization because of the innovation that occurs in Israel. This is where check meets mate. In Sheikh Antigeop's books, Civilization and Barbarism, page 94, what does Sheikh Antigeop say about the Natufians? Even these blacks of ancient Palestines, he's referring to Natufians, by the way, the biblical cousins of the Egyptians, the Canaanites of the Bible's descendants of who? The Natufians. The man found in prehistoric times, the Natufian was what? A Negroid. Page 107, also in Sheikh Antigeop's book, The African Origin of Civilization. So, in Civilization and Barbarism, Sheikh Antigeop identifies that the biblical Israelites are related to the Natufians. They are descendants of the Natufians, the ancient black Negroids of Palestine. In his book, The African Origin of Civilization, page 107, he literally makes it clear that they were a people of color. The Natufian group of Palestine were Negroid. And they are the relatives of the biblical Hebrews. What else do we know about these people, the Natufians, who are relatives of the biblical Hebrews? The Natufians carry, what else do we know about them? They date back to 12,500 BCE. Here is where I literally drop the mic and walk away for a commercial break.
All right. It's your brother Zion Lex. Sign up for our online academy, which is Learn Torah Hebrew Academy at patreon.com/Learn Torah. There are several classes that we offer. We offer a Biblical Hebrew 101 class for beginners. We have a Biblical Hebrew 102 class for people who are a little bit more advanced. We also have a weekly Torah class. We also have our Patriarchs of the Covenant course, our Matriarchs of the Covenant course, and a bi-weekly rabbinical course. All of these courses can be found on Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/Learn Torah. You guys were definitely in for it. It's a very invasive class. All of our classes are deeply invasive and very, very meticulous to the T when it comes to understanding the culture, the heritage, and the history of our ancient ancestors. So sign up for Biblical Hebrew at patreon.com/Learn Torah. I am your brother, Zion Lex.
And I only got a couple of moments ago, but this food is not finished cooking. We haven't got to the grand finale yet, but we're there. The Natufians, the ancestors of the biblical Hebrews, they go back to 12,500 BC and 8,000 BC. That's long before Nabta, Playa. Jabari said, Zion, I have two words for you, Nabta, plier. And these two words completely blow Sumer and Israel out of the park. Jabari, I also have two words for you. Those two words are Natufian DNA. And they completely blow Jabari, Nabta, Playa, Kemet, HOK, out of the park. And when I say HOK, I'm referring to its team of scholars. Out of the park. Natufians carry haplogroup E1B1 DNA. That's the same as you, black man, which includes North Africans, Sub-Saharan Africans, and non-Arab Levantines. Non-Arab Levantines. As Sheikh Antigio pointed out, the Negroid black Palestinians who are related to the biblical Hebrews. The genetic structure of the world's first farmers who are Natufians. This is from the book Genomic Insights into the Origin of Farming in the Ancient Near East, showing how the Natufians look and pointing out that they're the world's first farmers. So if you don't understand how checkmate works, let me explain to you that here is where check just mate. The Natufian people gave rise to what creates the earliest civilization, the Sumerian civilization, because the Natufians are the world's first agriculturalists. It is through agriculture that man leaves the hunter-gathering stage and begins to build cities. City is at the heart and base of the word civilization. Comes from the Latin term civitas, city. You don't have a civilization until you have cities. You see, you have to really understand the nature of the topic in order to even explain it intricately. So everybody, please just listen for a moment as we close on this thought. The world's first civilizations do not become a civilization until they first become a sedentary society, a society that stops moving from place to place as hunter-gatherers and is stationary in one place. What created for a sedentary society, a society that would be stationed in one place, is the innovation of agriculture. And that is why to this date, it is the scholarly consensus that of all of the hallmarks of civilization, it is agriculture that led to the creation of civilization, because it is agriculture that allowed people to stop moving from place to place as hunter-gatherers and to reside in one place, which is referred to academically as being a sedentary society, and therefore create what's called agriculture. So now that I can be sustained by the land and I don't have to travel and follow hunt, now I can develop other and cultivate other things. I can build cities. I can distribute labor. I can create job and skills. I can build irrigation systems, sophisticated irrigation systems. We can come up with a rule of law. We can talk about our concept of God and spirituality. When all of those hallmarks come together, we now have what's called civilization. But what civilization is owed to is what spawned civilization. Agriculture is the most thing that led towards the creation of what's called a sedentary society. Agriculture. The people who created agriculture are the Natufians, the black Palestinians, the relatives, the Israelites. Go read Sheikh Antigio's books. I showed you the quotes. Now go in the books and see it for yourselves. So, Jabari, to be clear, I'm not interested in Abraham and his connection to Sumer to simply say that, well, the Hebrew's origin is old because we're connected to Sumer. Jabari, you don't even have the brain capacity to know where I was going with this. That's why you failed at even knowing where I was going with this. I'm far above what you're thinking. Please don't compare tomatoes with apples. You are not me, son. What I'm talking about in comparing Abraham to Sumer and showing from the biblical text that God's desire wasn't that Abraham stay in Sumer. Nah, because that's not where this whole thing started. God knows what even the consensus knows today. All of this was sparked in the land of Israel. The Creator is calling Abraham out of Sumer, the place where civilization has its origin, but he brings Abraham to Israel, the place that made it necessary for the creation of civilization. On that note, shalom and peace. Sign up for our classes, patreon.com/learn Torah. We got a class tonight. We got a biblical Hebrew class going on tonight, and that's going to be followed by an ancient history class, a brand new class. 2 back-to-back hitters. Go on our Patreon immediately, patreon.com/Torah, learn Torah, patreon.com/learn Torah. Sign up for our classes. If you want to catch the lectures, make sure you're at least a gold tier member or higher. The work is easy when you're well studied.
All right. It's your brother Zion Lex. Sign up for our online academy, which is Learn Torah Hebrew Academy at patreon.com/learn Torah. There are several classes that we offer. We offer a Biblical Hebrew 101 class for beginners. We have a Biblical Hebrew 102 class for people who are a little bit more advanced. We also have a weekly Torah class. We also have our Patriarchs of the Covenant course, our Matriarchs of the Covenant course, and a bi-weekly rabbinical course. All of these courses can be found on Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/learn Torah. You guys were definitely in for it. It's a very invasive class. All of our classes are deeply invasive and very, very meticulous to the T when it comes to understanding the culture, the heritage, and the history of our ancient ancestors. So sign up for Biblical Hebrew at patreon.com/learn Torah. I am your brother, Zion Lex.